Hello, I'm Elizabeth Conley from Interview Skills Clinic. Now in this video I want to share a common interview problem that was experienced by a client and discuss some of the likely reasons for some of the problems they were having. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with a colleague or friend who's struggling to get a job, and add any questions that you have below and I'll certainly try and answer them. Now, the comment that we had was, I've worked in a role for a really long time and I'm now in a senior leadership position, but despite applying for many roles and getting interviews, I never get the job. Even when a client or colleague has recommended that I should apply for the role, I still don't get it. I'm losing my confidence. I feel really stuck in my career. Okay. This is incredibly frustrating. Every interview that you go for and you don't succeed at inevitably chips away at your own interview confidence. And ultimately, it chips away the confidence that you have as a person. And that just affects not just your current role, but also your life in general. And clearly the fact that the person who's sent us this message has worked successfully for many years in the same organisation and they've been promoted suggests that actually they do their job well, and it's likely that they have lots of really valuable skills and experience, and there's no reason why they really shouldn't be successful with the right preparation. Equally, some of their clients, they clearly build really strong relationships because some of their clients have suggested that they apply for roles in their organisations, and this reinforces their skills and experience, and it all sounds really positive. So what could be happening? Well, first of all, quite simply, interviewing inexperience. If you haven't had an interview for a long time, you're going to be out of practice. An interview requires you to really talk about yourself and to promote yourself, and that doesn't come naturally to most of us. In my experience, contractors are often the most skilled at interviews because they often have short-term contracts, maybe 6 months, a year, 18 months, and they end up by having lots of interviews. And of course, it's like anything that we do. If we practice it, we get better and better at it. So it could simply be inexperience that has caused the problem. But of course, once you start having a problem, we tend to fiddle a little bit with it. What I mean by that is that you have a bad interview and you think, oh, I wonder what I've done. I know I'll go away and prepare a little bit more. So you do a little bit more preparation. And then, of course, what tends to happen is we might move across from preparing flexibly to preparing inflexibly and almost being over-prepared for the interview. So we start to tweak at the way we behave and prepare in an interview, but we don't really know why we're doing it. We're just guessing what's going wrong, and that might not actually be correct. So I know in our first coaching session that we have with our clients, one of the first things we do is look to see how well a person is coming across. What are they doing well? And even if they feel they're not doing anything well, I promise you there'll be lots of things they're doing well. And once we identify that, we can then actually build confidence and identify things that they could be doing even better. So it's about identifying the right things. Okay, so that I think could be causing part of the problem. The other thing that I picked up on really is this is somebody in quite a senior position. So they are likely to have had some interviewing experience themselves, interviewing other candidates, but they are likely to have interviewed people more junior than themselves. And what tends to happen is we mirror the way that we've seen other candidates interviewing because they've interviewed and they've got the job. So therefore, we're going to interview in the same way. But of course, that's not always appropriate. If you're going for a more junior level role, it might be appropriate. But if you're going for a more senior level role, then that probably isn't appropriate. It's probably more of a process kind of answer rather than talking more strategically and talking about some of the challenges. So you just may not be interviewing at the right kind of level because you haven't seen it and you haven't experienced it. Okay, so I think that is a possible problem. Thirdly, I think, and I mentioned this earlier or touched on it earlier, is they may not be preparing in the right way. They may be putting too much emphasis on preparing for the company that they're going to join, but rather than focusing on their experience. And I think this is quite quite common when somebody's invited you to the interview and said, look, we can see you're doing a really great job, come to this interview. And we almost think, well, my experience is a given, and therefore they know what I do, and therefore I'm likely to get the job. But actually, it's not the case. You really need to be thinking about your experience and thinking about how you're substantiating that experience with evidence. So they might, and this really touches on, my point 4 really, is that they might be doing what a lot of people do, is describing their experience, describing their examples, rather than illustrating their role within the example. Okay, and that's really important, because it's not just about the experience you've had, which involved lots of people. It's really about what was your role within it, and actually what's the so what of that. So one of the things I often say to my own clients is, so what? Who cares? You've got a breadth of experience. What does that mean for the role you're applying for? So it's really about making a much stronger link between the experience, what you did, and why it's relevant for the job that you're going for. All right. Okay, so the 5th point really that I think could be causing some of the problem is they might be focused more on why they want the role. Okay, because we heard from the comment that they made earlier that they've been in the role a long time and they want to change. And it's very easy to talk about that in an interview and say, well, actually, I need a new challenge, and, I've been in this role a long time, and actually what I want is more learning and development opportunities. But, the bottom line is that hiring manager does not care. Why should they care? What they're interested in is not giving you an opportunity. You haven't joined them yet. What they're interested in is, have you got the skills to do the job? And are you the best person to do the job? So it may be that they just need to sort of change the story and rephrase what they're saying, so that they're focusing more on what they bring to the role. All right. The 6th point is really, and again, this is something I touched on a little bit earlier, is that in my experience, what happens is when people start to fall at interviews and they're not successful, we all have a tendency to go away, sort of say, oh, we clearly haven't done enough work. We need to do more work on this. And we do more preparation, and we do more preparation, we do more preparation, until our answers become so rigid that actually we can't answer. Tell me about a time when you had to influence somebody. Tell me about a time when you had to influence and didn't influence somebody. We don't think about that. We only think about one way of answering. And because we've over-prepared, we've sort of learnt our answer. And that creates this sort of brain freeze and anxiety in an interview, because we only want them to ask the questions that we've prepared, and we're not open to how that question might be phrased in many, many different ways. And we find as coaches that often if you spend more time understanding why the question is being asked and what the interviewer is looking for in the answer, then we can become much more flexible in our approach. And we don't care how that question is asked, because we sort of know what they're looking for, and we can just rephrase what our own experience to draw that out depending on the question. Okay, and that's obviously a little bit of a skill, and it takes practice, but it's certainly not impossible, and it can actually happen quite quickly as well. Okay, the 7th point I really want to make is that one of the problems that could be happening, and again I think this is common for most of us, is that we're uncomfortable about promoting ourselves. Particularly, I think, in some ways, if you have a supervisory role or a leadership role, then you will spend a lot of time getting the rest of your team on board. You'll be promoting your team. You'll be getting them on board with ideas. It's all about collaboration. It's all about shared ideas. And you just won't be used to talking about the I. And as we go into an interview, there are certain things that we need to be saying. We need to be saying, what was my priority here? What did I see here as important? What did I do? How did I contribute? So we even, working in organizations, which of course are all collaborative, we still need a much more focus on the I, because they're not interviewing anybody else and nobody else is applying for the job. You're sitting in front of them and they really want to know, what do you bring to the role? And that's something we feel really uncomfortable about. Once we get our head around that and start to talk aloud, it makes a really big difference. So I find often clients will sometimes write things down. They'll spend a lot of time in their heads, but actually what we say in our heads is very different to what we say aloud. And what we need to do is just do lots and lots of talking aloud. So, when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it works. Look at yourself in the mirror. If you've got an interview, pick a theme from the job specification, whatever it might be. Maybe it's working collaboratively or building relationships, and just sort of say, let me tell you a little bit about, how do I go about? When's been a difficult time? Start just talking aloud about your experience so that you start to hear yourself, and you've also got a mirror in front of you, and you're not learning your answer, but you're just chatting about yourself, so that you're starting to build almost a collection of stories about you and why you've got the skills to do the job. And I promise you that makes a really, really big difference. So, this was a really common problem that I think can be resolved with, one or two coaching sessions. Most of our clients have a couple of coaching sessions, but importantly, it really doesn't take long to succeed. And you want to break that negative cycle of rejections, because it has a really, really bad impact on, your life and you as a person, as well as your work. And it's so easy to be resolved. If you would like, one-to-one coaching, then please, go to our website, interviewskillsclinic.co.uk. We've got a team, 5 professional interview coaches. You can book a free consultation with us where we can talk to you in detail about what the coaching will involve and why and how we tailor it to you and your needs. Or you can download our free preparation guide, which I think will also be really useful. Or just add your questions below, and, I'll certainly try and help and support you for your next interview. Good luck with your interview. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel.